Call the new Hanover County Commissioner meeting to order, and we'll need to do a roll call vote. Go ahead, Madam Chair.
Call the Hanover County Board of Education meeting to order.
Do a roll call vote. Commissioner Barfield, are you there?
Here.
Commissioner Zappel.
Aye.
Commissioner Ravenhart.
Aye.
Commissioner Hayes.
Present.
And I am present.
Vice Chair Collier. Here. Ms. Justice.
Here.
Ms. Craybill. Here. Mr. McManus.
Here.
Ms. Walker. Here. And Mr. Wildebohr.
Present.
And I am present. Madam Chair.
Thank you. So I guess we'll be working together, and I'm excited to hear our agenda calls for Dr. Faust presentation, followed by Assistant Superintendent.
If I could just do a quick introduction, I would like to say thank you first off for this opportunity. I know it's been many years since our two governmental bodies have sat down together at the table, so we are grateful to be able to have this time. Dr. Faust joined us on September 1st, and it has been 6 months of tumultuous mayhem. He came in the middle of a pandemic. It's working, yes. He has brought a fresh spirit, innovative ideas, and he is the future of New Hanover County schools. And so we are very excited to hear from him today. And so I will turn it over to him to share some of his direction for the pursuit of excellence.
Okay. Go up here or up there?
Wherever you're most comfortable.
Okay. I have the clicker. So this is on. For some reason, on technology channel.
This blind leading the blind.
Figure this out. So, first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone. And just understand, this is actually, this is huge for everyone, just to be able to sit down and talk about the direction of not only the school district, but I think of it as the future, because when we get students that some of them come to us at the age of 3 and they exit us at 18. So we have the opportunity to embrace, grasp, and educate students and take them into areas that some they never saw would ever come to fruition. So I am very much, and I coined the phrase, a student superintendent. So, and we'll talk through this, what does that mean, like student superintendent. I believe that we always have to put students first. In everything we do, we have to have the students at the forefront. We will get through anything else, but we have to make sure that students are there. And so you will learn as you're working with me, as we're talking, it's not an I thing, it's not a Charles thing, it's not a superintendent thing, it's how do we best serve the students in our school district, making them better citizens, quality educated, with a rigorous program that will lead them from the either college or the career access. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. How do we get there? And so again, I am just excited to start the conversations with it. So I am a North Carolina native. From 1974 all the way to July of 2010, I lived in North Carolina, right outside of Greensboro. Grew up here. I'm a graduate of North Carolina A&T, UNC Chapel Hill, and also I have more that I just don't stop writing. That kind of embarrassing, which shows that I'm a nerd. So I didn't want to show this, so I stopped right there, but there are a couple more that we are able to do. As you know, I was a former superintendent in Kansas City and came here because I wanted to come back home. I did turnaround work, and when I talk about turnaround work where the state prior to, when I went to Houston, I was recruited to go there to do turnaround work. So the state had told the school district that they had 3 options, and one of the options was to close the school, reconstitute the school, or repurpose. And so they reconstituted the school, and I brought to my family a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, my wife. We went to Houston. It was just us in that big city, 200,000 students. And in 3 years, we were at Ivy Middle School, and we were the highest growing middle school in in the county, or in the county. And so we did a phenomenal thing there, and they're continuing to thrive there. Went on to work in Kansas, and that was the lowest performing school district in the state. And really low. So they got a lot of national awards with academics. And it's tough. I would be the first to tell you it was not a cake ride. We had to keep students first, honestly. And then I got the opportunity, a call, and so I understood there was some positions that were open in North Carolina, and I was like, oh my gosh, wow. And I am so happy that we united and we are a part of one another's lives. So today we're going to talk about some things. And one of the things that I want you to understand is that I want all students to have a quality, rigorous education. All means all. So there's not a zip code that determines, there's not a school that determines the rigor or the quality. All means all. So I push hard to ensure that it doesn't matter who goes to what school, when they come out, they've gotten the quality education that they deserve and that they need. So here, this is where one of my loves and my passions is actually teaching. This is math. I love to teach math, and one day I'll tell you, if you ever want to hear about me teaching math or being a math major and changing some things, because analytical geometry and myself, we had to get a divorce. And so we reconciled the differences. They kept the degree, they kept that title, and I went superintendent, but if it had not been for analytical geometry, I would probably be a math teacher. And I just don't know, I still don't understand today where two parallel lines intersect. But there is a proof. If you remember geometry, there's a proof that you have to divide that. So how do we get here? We're in a relentless pursuit of excellence. And what does that mean? And those words were chosen on purpose. The pursuit. It's like we're chasing, we're after excellence. Relentless meaning that we won't stop. And I was telling them, as long as it's legal and ethical, we are going to go there. So we're going to talk about our innovation and what it's going to take for us to get there. And one of the biggest things that I always do, and I always tell us that we have to do, is we have to always audit our own programs to make sure that we're still fulfilling the needs of the individuals, what it was intended to do. And the moment that it's not doing what we set out to do, then we've got to go back and we've got to reevaluate. One of the things I shared with our senior staff is that you have to sometimes do an autopsy on the problem because you just can't kick it to the side. So that's what an audit does. It does an autopsy on what is the problem, how are you going to get there? And then, we'll come back and sometimes we have to, just veer to the right, veer to the left. And sometimes we have to make a complete U-turn and go back the other way. So one of the things that I am relentless and I want everyone to understand is that if students can't read, there's very little that they can do. We have several students who, in the nation, who don't read on grade level. And so that hurts me to my heart, knowing that we as educators, we have the prescription to fix it. We know what to do. It's just how do we do it? So this literacy audit is one of the things that we are working on right now. They're looking at all of our literacy practices across the district, and we're trying to get some alignment and measurements. And they're doing an autopsy on the literacy program. And our goal is by the third grade, so starting with preschool, kindergarten, by third grade, we want 90% of our students reading on grade level. And so you may ask, well, why not 100%? There are some students, because of disabilities, that it will not, they won't be able to do that. And that's what a learning disability or whatever their disability is. But we only know chasing or looking for the pursuit of excellence, 90%. That's where we're wanting to take this. Technology access, this has been a high point, and I know that you have learned, well, I'll say we had to learn a little bit the hard way, how to drive the car without a steering wheel. But we did it. How are we going to get there? So we want to be a one-to-one district. We need to make sure that what we have is, again, innovative, making sure that what is the future of the nation? What is the future of New Hanover? What is our future? How do we get there? So using a one-to-one device, which we, a couple of months ago, well, actually a couple of days ago, we had all of our elementary kids at home. And so they were having to look through a technological device in order to be able to receive the education. So we're still there. However, we have had to order devices because we weren't prepared in that sense. We did it and they did it, the team did it without hesitation. They were able to get it. But we want to make sure that our teachers are trained on how to educate students using the one-to-one device. Now, I know that we have learned by fire, and teachers and principals, but what does that look like? What does the facilitation model look like when you actually incorporate instruction through a technology device, even when we're not in a pandemic arena? That's the innovation. So it's more of the teacher changing places instead of the traditional teacher and the teacher becoming a facilitator. And so that's where we're wanting to move, and making sure that we have all of the professional development. Oftentimes we will do things, we will buy things in the educational world because we need it and we have to do it, and it's like we have to hit the ground running and we have to do it really fast. But we miss out on so much when we don't develop our educators. So the goal is to create an atmosphere for professional development where when we see a problem, that's called the autopsy. When we see a problem, we can go back and find out where was it that we missed the bug, and we fix it. We have to do that as educators. We have to. Remember, we have pre-K through 12th grade, and we want to make sure that this precious cargo, when they leave us, that they have the same opportunity that anyone else would in the nation. They will be able to outperform or perform with any of those individuals. Community engagement. This is also a big part of what we all do. Part of my job is, of course, leading the district, but it's also about community engagement and listening to stakeholders and having our stakeholders. Well, what we have realized is that we also have stakeholders who are bilingual or do not speak English. And how do we reach those individuals? And so one way that we've started to do these things is we're looking at our marketing specialists. We have a marketing specialist. We're interviewing for a marketing specialist. That's twofold. So how do we market our district? And not only market it in English, but we've also got to market it in Spanish. That's another language. And we have other languages that are there. But when we look at how the languages that are spoken right now, Spanish is our top other language. And then a community engagement specialist. So what does that person do? All day, every day, they're working on government issues, they're working with legislature, they're working with the engagement in the community to make sure that we are a resource for our community. Oftentimes we forget, not only do we educate students, but we are also an organization that provides resources. So it's not only just educating, but we are a hub for resources. And so when you're processing, Charles, what does that mean? So sometimes we have to find out what are your other needs other than educating. We have students who come, they may not have all of their needs, but we have departments here, but we're not reaching everyone. So we want to make sure that our community needs are met. What's the platform that we use for them? And I know a lot of times you as board members, you get those information. So what can we do to engage our community to make sure that their voices are being heard? So that's what that resource is. How do we get to that college and career preparation? Well, it doesn't start at the high school. I promise you it doesn't. Students should not have the first interaction about college their 11th grade year, or their 10th grade, or their 9th grade. I would tell you that if you're wanting to introduce it to someone, that's actually too late at that point. We have to do it earlier. So the goal for the innovation is to make sure that our students, by 4th grade, they're visiting a college campus. By 7th grade, they're visiting a college campus. So that they've been introduced to the college world. Now, that doesn't mean that every student is going to go to college. I understand that. That's not what we're promoting. Then we have the career side. When should we introduce careers to our students? It's not at the high school level. That should not be the introduction. We should be doing that in the middle school. We should be talking about, we have pathways here in our school districts, so all of our high schools have a different pathway. And so what we have to do is introduce those to students, what I call as a wheel. So you give them different samples at the elementary world so they can begin to start thinking and hearing, what is it that I want to be when I grow up? If I want to do this, what are the requirements for me to do this? Because if you have a teenager, if you have a student who is in high school, you know if they're wanting to go to college, it's highly competitive. And if the GPA isn't where it needs to be, we have to do some prep work. However, we need to introduce that to our students early on, not as a scare tactic, but to say, these are the things that you need. And so that innovation starts. And we also have to go back to our community and find out if our pathways for our career, our CTE programs, are aligned with what our community offers. Those are the things that we have to ask to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community. And so if we aren't meeting the needs, so if we have a pathway that is somewhat outdated, how do we make it updated? What do we have to do to ensure that if a student knows the career route, that we prepare them to walk into a job after they leave us? That's the career side of it. So again, it's about the students. How do we make sure that they're successful when they leave us? So again, ensuring students are ready for that college. So again, we want to take a look at this. One of the things that I've shared with our department is talking about, I call it the FAFSA Bus. So the FAFSA Bus is something that goes to every school, and we have a night where parents come, minus COVID, they would come to the school, we would have those senior parents come and say, hey, if you need support filling this out, we can walk you through it. We can tell you. We would have representatives from the community college, because it doesn't matter what college you're going to, everyone, well, we won't say everyone would want to fill out the FAFSA, to see what they are afforded in the scholarship lane or if it's a grant lane. So then, of course, our students here who are what we call dual enrollment. Dual enrollment is where they take a course at the high school level and one at the college, or you have it's a college course, but it's taught at the high school, meaning if I'm a high school student, I'm taking college course, so called dual. So we have 1,721 students who are taking a college course and getting dual credit. So that means dual credit, they get credit at the high school, and then it falls into their transcript for college. So the goal would be so they wouldn't have to pay for that other course. We also talk about how do we make sure that students are getting what they need, and so they can take 3, 4 college courses so that they don't have to pay for those courses when they get into a college or university. How do we make sure they're doing that? So then our goal here, at the bottom it says a graduation rate. That's our current graduation rate. So my question is, how do we improve that? What's the stopgap that's creating that 12.4% from not graduating? So that would be an autopsy. Because the goal would be for us to get in the upper 90s. How do we make sure, or grade 100%? Wouldn't that be awesome? No, we do have some schools that graduate 100%, but how do we get all of our campuses to graduate students on time to make sure that we're getting that other 12.4%? So the question for us is to find those students. Where are they? Where are they? And our principals, our counselors, they all know how to do this. Sometimes we just have to slow down and make sure that we're not running faster than the students. So, of course, with our college and career tech, CTE, college and career technical education, this will provide, as I stated earlier, this will provide us the opportunity for students to get to a career that would provide them a lucrative financial benefit. And if you everyone take a tour, or we're working on some video footage for all of our pathways so that we can post it. So parents will be able to look at them, students will be able to look at them prior to actually going to the school to say, oh, I want to do this. We want to have opportunities for students to look at the pathway so they can kind of say, well, they're in their traditional high school. What's the pathway they have? I never considered that. What does that mean? And we have short videos, so we're working on those things now. We're also doing an audit with our CTE program to make sure that we, again, are providing every opportunity that we can for our students. So again, early careers, that's where we have to start. That's with our elementary students, making sure that there's an awareness, and then, of course, identifying. So when we take these career opportunity pathways, of course, we're going to introduce them to them at the elementary level. But when we get to the middle school, when you start having conversations, in 8th grade, when you're doing course selections, that's kind of a lot of pressure on a student to say, what, I know my home high school is here, so this is where my zone high school is, but how do we know they don't want to do something else? How do we know that? And if we do it in March, which actually we're doing course selections right now, how do we know if they hadn't heard it through word of mouth, a brother, a sister, or a relative, or a neighbor, to try, how do we know? So that's what we're looking at. How do we get them there to make sure that they have industry recognized credentials? And so those are the credentials. So for instance, like if you are a welder, we have a welding program. So those individuals can make starting pay up to like $65 an hour or more. So what do they need to actually have those credentials? So when they walk out, there's a certificate that says, okay, I'm ready for my apprenticeship, and they can go right into it. Those are the things that we want to be able to help our community, and our community help us. So it's about recognizing what those credentials are. And of course, we want to make sure that when we're on our recruitment, and recruitment opportunities, the biggest thing is our principal pipeline. We want to make sure that our folks are eligible to lead schools. So right now we are opening, and I'll say it in an innovative way. We want to make sure that they can take a school that is a letter C and take it to a letter A, or a school that is a letter D and take it to a school, a letter rate of a B. How do they do that? We are opening my first here, pipeline, principal pipeline. So their applications out for only be for our assistant principals here. And they will go through trainings. We will have speakers come in to talk with them. We will have community involvement come in, because I'll tell you this, one of the hardest things to learn as a principal is to know that being the principal is not the only thing you do. Walking classrooms, giving feedback to teachers, that's not it. And so if you get stuck in that vein, you'll miss it. So what is a community want? So you've got to be involved in your community. You've got to make sure that you understand that going into it. So we want to make sure that that's what we are talking about. We also let individuals know that we have incentive pay for supplement pay when they are going to our main schools, and we have some performing schools that we offer incentive pay to go. We also want to make sure that we can increase that pay. So investing in our students, what does that look like? We want to be able to find out, talk about who is coming for our kids. Where are they going after? Those are bragging rights. Where do our kids go after they've received this rigorous quality education? Where are they going? How do we promote that? How do we, as it says there, how do we lead the way in telling our story? And we want to make sure that that's what we're going. So they're going to be, next year we're going to be talking about with our principals, how do we get rid of all of our low C-level schools to make them Bs? What will that look like? How do we get our F schools to be a D? And in 3 years, how does that F school become a high C? That's what we're going to be talking about, because we want to lead the way. We want to invest in making sure that we are within the next 3 to 5 years that we are ranked in the top 5%. Currently, we're around number 17, 18. So we have a good school district, but how do we create the best school district? Well, through this innovation, through the support, through making sure that one thing is this, that we can invest in our students, making sure that we have opportunities that set them apart from other school districts, that they have opportunities that they can come back and share and say, I did this when I was in Hanover County. So excellence is required. So that's where we're ending, is that we're just going to require excellence. We want excellence to be paramount with everything that we do. So I will stop here and ask you if you have any questions.
Anyone? Board Ed? Members?
I'm in.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, who do I? Julia? Are you?
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I
Go
just,
ahead.
no, that was my comment, I'm sorry. I didn't ask for permission.
Thank you. Yes, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much. And let's just say a big round of welcome.
Oh, thank you.
I am most impressed with you today, so keep it going.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
we're just really excited. I had, you kind of addressed one, but on the bilingual.
Mhm.
I know that Spanish is up there, but we have some growing populations, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but our Asian population, which is a variety
Yes.
of languages, I believe is growing very strong. Do we look at all the homes that are English as a second language to determine where we need to approach who and what? And do we have some pockets of that? I know we used to have some schools that were higher percentage of English as a second language
Yes.
than others.
Yeah, so when a student enrolls here, they take what's called a home language survey. And so that tells us what their home language is. So one of the things that they're able to do is if there are any phone messages that go out, they get to choose their language. However, we also have multiple languages here in the New Hanover County. And so we do have a department that supports and I keep saying however, there are some languages that we aren't able to translate for. So we get some of our community members to help us with those. So that's where we are with it. And so affording those marketing specialists, that the community engagement, that's where we'll be able to help. They will also support our bilingual department,
That's
our
all.
ELL department.
I still have one more.
Floor is yours.
You mentioned the schools A, B, C, D, and of course, we want everyone to be A, but keeping that in mind. Do we have a number of D and F schools? Well, I just think our schools are
No.
really
Yes.
great, so, but we,
So we only have, right now, we only have one F school,
okay,
this one.
but maybe a few Ds.
My understanding there's one, we have, a lot of our schools fall in the C range.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
So we have several schools that are C schools, and we
Okay.
want to make those high Cs.
or Bs,
Yeah, oh, and then Bs, yes, we want to definitely pick those schools to Bs.
but Bs, okay, and we want you all we want our school district, and I look at this as out, because it's all this, we want you all to be number one. So, tell us what we need to do to help.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Zappa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Childs, first of all, thank you for a wonderful presentation. It was great. I was curious about the graduation rate you had on, I can't remember what slide it was. Yeah, 87.6. Does that represent someone who starts in, a 12-year education and then graduating, I guess we call on time? I'm sure there's another more technical term for that. Is that what 87%?
So that would start with those who enter, so we have cohorts, so you're a 4-year cohort and you're 5-year cohort. And so only that time starts as soon as once they enroll in high school.
I see.
So when they enroll, ninth grade, that's when the time, it's or, whatever, I should say ninth grade, but yes, they could be in another district, but if they come to us, yes, it's not the high
Is
school.
that, where are we with as far as the state is concerned?
As far as graduation rate, I would have to check that one.
I got it pretty close to it.
But it's, we do have a high graduation rate, so, by no means is it, that's a bad, 89 is not bad when you think about how many kids we leave with a high. That's how I look at it. So we look at how, so we are a good school district and how do we get there to be a better school district. So I'll find out where we are with the state, but we are ranked up there 80, number 86, yeah, in a lot of school districts.
Mr. Donovan, do you have a follow-up?
No, I think you got it, I appreciate that.
Mr. Randall? Mr. Warfield?
Following along, listening, no questions.
There he is.
Dr. Faust, can I ask, can you tell us like the plan or cost for the OnetoOne devices? Do we have 5 years? Are you working with the county? Of course, I hope and asking the foundation, or you have various asks, I hope. And what is the reading level right now?
So we have not finished our audit for our third grade reading. So that's what that should be, and I'll have Dr. Smith here with me to find out all those reading levels. However, yes, we are working to come up with the cost, not come up with the cost, but to find out what the cost will be for the 5 years for our one-to-one. And we say 5 years because we would start high school, then go to middle school, and then elementary. So it would be computers or laptops for 3 through 12, and then we would do iPads for K2.
I guess my question is, does it tend to be more aggressive and why is it taking 5 years?
You said how?
Why is it taking 5 years?
To make sure, so the goal, we can always speed it up. 5 years more than easy. No, I remember I'm a relentless person, so we could do it in 1 year.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
I don't know if you wanted to.
Did you have, I'm done, go.
I was just to clarify that one of the reasons that the technology director, or superintendent was recommending 5 years is because you need to be on a replacement cycle, at least ideally a 4-year replacement cycle. But if we buy them all at one time, and then we have to buy them all again at one time, and it makes more sense to not bring them all on at once to provide professional development, but also to build in their replacement.
I guess this was from last year, you know.
Right.
It's just, it just seems like everything that can
I understand.
students learn should be accelerated, but that's just me. Madam Vice Chair?
And I know this is going to be hard to answer, but we've come through COVID. It's next week it'll be a year. Am I correct in that? Okay, stab me in my heart, that hurts. And I know everybody sitting at this table is doing everything they can and working very hard and diligently to do that. But are we going to, I know you have to look at those numbers because the failure rates are something that we're all very concerned about. But are we kind of taking 2019 numbers and then maybe 2021, 2022 numbers to really get a more stable feel on that? Is that, can I
Yes,
say that?
that's so it'd be more, we look at a 5-year trend of where we were, or we look at a 3-year trend and to see what we need to do, who needs to be remediated, how do we get there. So we will be supporting our schools, and it'll be more, I call it a task force, but we'll be looking at, if you're looking specifically at reading, we'll be talking more about reading and how to get there and the science of reading. So the question to answer is yes, we will be looking at multiple sets of data for multiple years because this is an outlier and we know this is an outlier.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from Board of Ed? Any questions or comments? All right, well, well, if not, thank you, Dr. Faust, for that presentation. I know it's been 6 months of collecting a lot of information, learning about our district, our community, our board, and you've been doing a fantastic job, and we look forward to what's coming next. So the next item on the agenda is the facilities, New Hanover County Schools facilities, and I'd like to welcome Assistant Superintendent of Operations, Mr. Eddie Anderson. When I talk about Mr. Anderson, I tell people he literally knows the number of ceiling tiles in every classroom, in every building. Pretty close though, right? Right?
I might have replaced it at one time. That I probably have. Yeah, well, again, I'm Eddie Anderson, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Normally, we present our facility needs survey to the Board of Education and the County Commissioners, and I just think this is a unique opportunity to have both boards together. I'm also excited because I love facilities and planning. And I just like talking about it, and I truly believe that our facilities make an impact on learning and will help achieve the goals that Dr. Faust has set out. And I think we've got some great examples with the last bond referendum. I wanted to start out just to kind of tell you where we are. This is a quote: "Good fortune is what happens when opportunity meets with planning." And the facility needs survey is just that. It's good planning. The facility needs survey is just the first step in looking towards a building program, whether that's one school, multiple schools, additions, renovations. So it is not a commitment of funds or a schedule or anything like that. This is a snapshot of our Hanover County Schools facilities today. This is one of my favorite pictures. I got to just point it out to you. This is the Hanover High School gym and the steel erection there. So I tried to include some photos from the last building program to share with you if you haven't been able to get out to our new schools. The facility needs survey, not just good planning, it's also required by law. So this law was first implemented in 1988, and later the requirement was that it had to be updated each and every 5 years. The last survey was done in 2015. As I mentioned, the facilities needs survey is not a commitment of funds. It's even though the projects in the facility needs survey are prioritized, it is not an implementation schedule. And before we would consider implementing these, we would probably look at district-wide improvements and definitely program management and program contingencies, as we've done with past bond referendums. So what the facility needs does consider enrollment projections. The facility needs survey is a program that's provided to us by the state. Enrollment projections are built into this program, provided to us by the state. We always also contract with a demographer, and we get our own enrollment projections. We don't like to go with one. We want to look at both and take some averages and see what direction we think things are going. That has worked, and it's been very successful for us in the past. We were going to get our enrollment projections open or updated last year, but we held off due to the pandemic and obviously the impact that has made on our community and our schools. On a positive side, it gave us the opportunity to work with your county planning office, with Rebecca Roth, and we're actually looking at working together to update enrollment projections, as well as have the demographer study what student yields might be for certain developments. So you will really have a much better idea when looking at future development, what the impact will be on school systems, and appreciate that opportunity. It also looks at our existing facilities. We do what's called a existing conditions assessment. It's a very comprehensive analysis of each and every one of our schools. It purely looks at the condition, building systems and structures. And then we also look at the educational adequacy of our buildings. Some of our older buildings and the sites or the spaces, how does that compare with what we would build today? And that way we can identify those deficiencies. And through all of this, it shows the needs for new schools, additions, and renovations. So I mentioned the last survey was done in 2015. Total needs identified were $406 million. The facility needs survey breaks it down into two priorities. It's a 10-year plan. Priority 1 would be 0 to 5 years. You see 169 million identified in 2015. Priority 2, 6 through 10, and the needs identified were 237 million. So what's changed? I really wanted to, before I show you the 2020 numbers, I really wanted to talk about this because we have had some pretty significant changes over the last 5 years. Demographics, our student growth is not at the same rate it was 5 years ago. Current population bubble in our schools is in the 8th grade. It's now moving into our high schools. So we planned for that. We've actually put some modulars in place that we purchased through the bond and used as swing space on construction at other sites. The makeup of our county is not the same as it was 5 years ago. The average population is getting older in our county as well. So overall, what I'd say is, we're seeing a slower but more manageable growth in our school system. We're also seeing, even though there's construction going on everywhere, multifamily housing doesn't yield the same number of students that the single-family housing does. So there's that shift that's occurring too. And one of the reasons why I think it's important to be working with county planning and to really hone in on that, see what the impact will be for the years to come. Also, COVID-19, I'd like to tell you exactly what the impact has been, but I'm not sure at this point we really know. We've obviously lost some students. I think at least 85% or more of those will come back next year, and our goal is to get all of those students back. K-3 class size reduction. It's been about 4 years we've been talking about this, and this is the final year. So we are implementing the final year of that. And lastly, construction costs. In addition to the enrollment projections, construction costs are built into this program as well. So if we identify the need for a new school, I enter 90,000 square feet, and it tells me exactly how much that's going to cost, all the way through design, construction, furniture, and equipment. And that is based on all the school systems in the state reporting their construction costs back to DPI. So it's set up on averages. And but we've seen in almost close to a 50% increase in construction costs from what DPI was saying 5 years ago. So our 2020 facility needs survey, I'll go through this in a little more detail, but just the overview first. Total needs identified were 442 million. And I'll tell you, the reason it's higher than it was 5 years ago is purely construction costs. However, the next thing I would say is K-3 class sizes. And we passed a bond referendum in 2014. The state wanted to do K-3 class size. It almost broke even. K-3 class size reduction cost us almost 1.5 schools. So our highest priority 0 to 5 years, 170 million. Second priority 6 through 10 is 271, almost 272 million. Drilling down a little further, in the first 5 years, our priorities would be River Lights High School, or River Lights Elementary School. We'll wait on that. And then safety and security. This has been a real concern in our renovations and new construction. We want to continue our efforts in safety and security. And then our specialty high schools, expansion, modernization, and growth. replacement, the top 3 priorities I've got shown there, River Lights Elementary School, replacement of Pine Valley Elementary School. I know that those 2 projects are nothing new, no surprises. We've been talking about those probably since the last program or survey. And then renovations to Williams Elementary School. And the second priority, 6 through 10, we want to continue our safety and security efforts. A lot of times, our goal overall in safety and security is to really build in those measures to protect our buildings and their occupants that we have in our new schools. We're really looking at kind of you have a 2-step verification on your phone or computer. We really want a 2-step verification process when you come into the building. You walk up to the front door and there's an intercom system. You can talk to the receptionist, tell them why you're there. You then go into a secure vestibule. That way they can talk to you further, but more importantly, they can visually see you and see your demeanor. And maybe there's something that they can address with you there. Maybe you need to come into the building. And then lastly, you would be allowed into the building and into the admin area and interviewed or talk further and then let into the building if you need to go out into the main hallways. But we really want to expand this into our existing facilities, and not all of them are very easy to do. Some of them are quite difficult and would require major renovations. So the next thing I want to look at is drill down just a little bit further, look at our enrollment projections, our capacity summary plan, our call summary, and finally we'll end with the certification program. And looking at our enrollment projections, I mentioned to you that enrollment level I've highlighted there. It's currently in the 8th grade, and it's now moving into our high school. So over the next 5 years, we will be graduating the highest number of students we have. And then you can see when I've carried that out a little further, the state is projecting over the course of 5 years that we'll see almost a 5.5% growth overall in our district. But what I really want to point out is this. I haven't seen that in a long time. We've been relatively flat. If not, there was a time there where we actually had a decline in enrollment. The state is projecting that our early grades, our elementary schools, are going to be growing at the highest rate over the next 5 years, 10 years. This is the capacity summary report. It looks at our current capacity and our planned capacity. It's broken out into the 2 priorities. The first one is the 0 to 5 years. And you can look at this individual schools. What I want to focus on today is really the summary. If you are looking at this overall in our schools, we are over capacity. If all of the projects in the first 5 years were implemented, we would be slightly over or under capacity. Again, this is the summary report, same report. It's a comparison of current versus planned capacity. And this is for the second priority, which is the 6 through 10 years. And again, focused on the summary, our totals. Currently, we are over capacity. If all of the projects in the entire 10 years were implemented, then we would be under capacity. I will tell you, those numbers are a little higher than they typically would be. And the reason that is included in this, I've got new projects, new schools for new elementary schools. Let's see, 2 new elementary schools and a middle school. And the reason I put that in there is I think projections are really good 0 to 5 years. I think they're probably not quite as good 6 to 10 years. This is the 6 to 10 year summary. We're going to have another opportunity to look at this and determine exactly the need. And I put that in there because it gives us some flexibility, not something that we think we need to implement immediately, but it's a placeholder. It gives us some flexibility to look at some options, like maybe we build a new elementary school, convert Trask and Laney into one larger high school. And then I think another factor is to build out in the Sidbury Road area. We really want to see, how fast, how quickly that occurs. So again, point is there's going to be another opportunity to look at that. Health summary. This is, again, the first priority, 0 to 5 years. Projects are listed on the left-hand side, general scope of what those projects include, and then the total cost on the right-hand column. And for the first 0 to 5 years, it's $170 million. Again, I think I think these costs may be a little higher than they should be, but we don't determine that. That's built into our program. But to give you an example, our new projects, Porter's Neck Elementary School, turnkey was built for $17 million. A new school in this program is budgeted at $27 million. I know there's been some cost increase, no doubt. I don't know if it's that much. And this is the second priority, the 6 through 10 years. Again, the project on the left, the scope and the total, $271 million. And the first 3 projects there, the projects that we're talking about, we would have another opportunity to look at those, 2 new elementary schools and a middle school before those were implemented. And lastly, I wanted to show you the certificate. I know that was a lot of information, and I don't expect everyone. There's not going to be a pop quiz, I promise. I have shared this information with the Board of Education. The Board of Education certifies that the information is correct. County Commissioners certify that this information has been received and reviewed, and it is. I think they actually say that. There is no commitment of funding or verification of accuracy. This is the same certification that the state has been using for the past 20 years, at least as long as I've been doing this. So I'll stop at this point and ask if there's any questions, and if they're, I'll be glad to answer. And I've also, if you'd like to see some more information on our priority projects, I've got that as well.
Commissioner Rappaport.
And some of the newer schools were built so that you could add on to it.
Absolutely. We haven't, I would say, at least as long as I've been here, we show in those early schematic designs how we could add on classrooms. And in addition to that, we actually build our core facility capacity larger than the current classroom capacity. So that if we do add on, we don't also have to then go expand the kitchen and cafeteria and those things.
And the other question was, I saw Isaac Bear up there, and we've been talking about this for what, 3 or 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. But we got to get those kids out of those troubles. And the $67 million question is, where we put it? We've been hearing that the chancellor's going to give us property to build on, but that's all he can do is give us property to build on. He can't give it to us. We would know. We get a long lease on it. And then I heard some discussion about, maybe them giving us one of their buildings and let us put them in there. But we've got to find that answer out.
I agree. That is a priority. It is included in our facility needs survey. I have provided cost estimates that are in here. Those estimates on the construction of the building, until we really identify a site, I don't know what the site cost may or may not be. So it might have to be adjusted depending on infrastructure, whether there are roads, water, sewer, stormwater, and so forth that are already provided.
And we do.
One thing good about that school is you're not gonna have to do a baseball field, football field. You know, the giant parking lots, all that stuff that costs so much money. You're gonna have to do it.
So just to give some updates on that, we do have Mr. McManus and Ms. Walker as part of the Isaac Fair Committee. So they are in talks with UNCW and with the Chancellor. I also spoke to the Chancellor a few weeks ago, and Dr. Faust is in conversation as well. So we have some ongoing discussions about what could be next steps. And it's collecting some of the information from previous discussions to figure out a way forward. But we've been in talks with, I believe we've talked with Representative Davis. I believe Senator Michael Lee's been a part of this conversation. So we are bringing it back in and looking at what the options are moving forward.
Good.
Commissioner Barfield.
Yes, ma'am. I'm gonna chime in on the current conversation first. In regards to Isaac Bear, I think it's great that you all are talking with Representative Davis and Senator Lee. To me, this is truly a state conversation. You know, the Board of Commissioners, we fund to a large extent operational costs and building costs for K-Fit Community College. We passed out $167 million bond back in 2008 to build Union Station and advance the North Campus and build the Wilson Center and all those things, and are paying for those things, much like we do for the public schools here in our community. And to me, it's important that the Chancellor really has a focus on what the state has charged UNCW with. And I would encourage the school board to look at what other school systems in the state who have received the same mandate from the state, what have they done in regards to early colleges? Because we're not the only one in the state that has one. And then hold the Chancellor's feet to the fire as they've done in those other communities and make sure that this is a priority for UNCW to move forward. You know, again, we fund to a large extent Wilmington Early College through K-Fit Community College. And I don't think we've ever dropped the ball in what they need there in regards to funding. And I know Representative Davis will definitely fight hard to get you all the resources that you need. My next question goes to funding for your facilities needs assessment. My question is, how much money are you currently getting in every year from lottery proceeds, and how are you divvying that out? That's my first question.
So current lottery proceeds are 2.4 million a year.
It's been averaging closer to 2. It was as high as 2.4, but at least 2.
And currently those funds are allocated each year to meet the annual capital needs of our district.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Blake.
Mr. Anderson, I am correct, the lottery funds are very, very limited in terms of what we can use them for and what we can't use them for. Is that correct?
Well, they do have to be used for school facilities. There are some limitations. They cannot be used for athletic facilities, mobile units, pre-K, or administrative facilities. So
Nothing for staff, nothing for textbooks, nothing for technology.
they are bricks and mortar for school facilities.
I would say that I know that the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners have been advocating for several years now for the restoration of the full funding for the lottery proceeds back to our school system, recognizing that we're losing millions and millions of dollars that should be coming into our local school in particular, and have lost millions of dollars over the years because those dollars have been diverted to the state general fund versus our local fund as well. Looking at Mary C. Williams, why not just tear that school down and build brand new? Because to me, it's no different than a college park. I mean, I had daughters that went there. I called bingo at Mary C. Williams. But to me, it's more antiquated than Ogden. I mean, than College Park was. So why not just tear that school down and build a new one?
Commissioner Barfield, I think that's a fantastic segue. Mr. Anderson, if you would like to maybe highlight some of the top priorities, because Mary C. Williams is in that conversation, I believe.
Right, and Commissioner Barfield, I don't necessarily disagree with you. We do have, I'd like to share with you again, our top 3 priorities would be River Lights, Pond Valley, and Mary C. Williams. And I brought some additional information and hopefully a proposal. Can we bring up the PowerPoint?
I know that has opened the door to a money request.
Well, but I think you're gonna like this. We have really been studying this hard, and I think that we've got a good proposal. River Lights Elementary School, this is a great area. As you can see, Arrowhead Park is in the lower right-hand corner. The school site would be adjacent to Arrowhead Park. And you can see that the developer has already started putting in the infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, and it's a good time to work with them. I know that they are very excited about this school. I think it's a unique opportunity, and actually I think the county, because this development agreement started with the county, and the county negotiated the donation of this land for an elementary school. And that carried over to the city agreement, and they have honored that, and they're very excited about this, so thank you for that. This is a conceptual plan of exactly what that site, that school might look like. This is turned a little differently. Arrowhead Park would be to the top right of the screen. River Road would be to the, or top left of the screen. River Road would be to the right. But we just want to make sure that this is a 15-acre site. We want to make sure that it's adequate. I know that 15 acres, and then when you start talking about usable acres, two different things. So we think that this site works really well. This is a two-story building. It's actually Blair Elementary School. We do propose a new design here. I think it's a unique opportunity working with the developer. And I think also that we've learned a lot of things over the past 10 years. We've implemented some really innovative and really nice things in each one of our schools. This is an opportunity to bring all that together and do it in one school. Anything from daylighting to safety, security, and I don't know if you have seen or aware of the solar array that we have on Murray Middle School now, and how that's being incorporated into the instructional STEM program there. So I really want to take all of the things we've learned on individual projects and roll them into this project. It could really be something special. This is Pine Valley Elementary School, the red outline over the parking lot and playfield. Those are the existing buildings as they sit today. What we're proposing is to build a new school on the current playground while school is in session. And then over the summer, we would move into the new building, tear down the old buildings, and convert that space into parking and playfields. This is the same thing that was done when Ogden Elementary School was built. So it's a project that will keep you up at night, but I know we can do it, and we can do this successfully. I don't have a slide on Williams, but I want to talk about that because and answer Commissioner Barfield's question. Williams, we're calling for major renovations, and when we looked at River Lights and exactly how we would use Williams, we thought about expanding pre-K, and we thought about kind of a welcome center for our English learners. So Ms. Hayes, I'm glad that you brought that up. This could be really a one-stop shop for new enrollment, pre-K, English second learners, and maybe some planned development. We haven't figured out exactly everything that could be in that facility. But when you start thinking about using the facility in that way, all of a sudden the pods start to make sense. And so I think it's I think the site needs some work. I recognize that, and we will definitely renovate that building to meet the program needs. But so that the school population that's currently in Williams would then go to River Lights. Now, River Lights would be built larger than Williams, and so we would gain some additional capacity in our elementary schools as well. This is just a breakdown of the project. We take the total project budget of 27 million and we break it down into everything from surveying, geotechnical, furniture, library books, design, construction. I mean, we break it down into every individual category you can think of. And we base those estimates off real hard data that we've learned from in the past bond referendum. The important thing in doing this is we wanted to identify with each of these projects, what would it take just to get these projects started? So I've labeled it the initial design, but this would be the selection of the architect and then carrying those designs and cost estimates through the schematic design process. And Commissioner Barfield, when you asked about, I know this is going to end up to be a question about money. This is how we would propose to pay for it. Our current bond savings is or our current bond balance, I should say, is $3.4 million. The line items that I've identified in the tan color there, those are some of the last projects that we're finishing up. When I say finishing up, we're really tidying up some loose ends on these projects. So they'll be complete relatively soon. They total 1.3, which would leave a savings of $2.1 million. So I then brought forward the initial cost of the three projects, River Lights, Pine Valley, Mary C. Williams, plus the program management required to move those projects through that initial design. And those are the first 5 or 4 line items. And then one other need that we identified, roofing was a big part of the bond program. And in our last evaluation of roofs, we identified Bellamy recover as a need. Same thing when we're talking about computers and spreading out the life cycle of those and replacement values. We do the same things with our roofs. And we know that we're not going to get funding to replace our roofs on a 20-year life cycle. So we always look at about 15 years. Can we spend far less and recover those roofs and get another 10 years? And how will that flatten that curve of roof replacements? So something we've been working on really hard over the last 5 years. I think we've been pretty successful in doing that. This would be another project to include total there is $1.4 million, and that would leave a $690,000 balance as a contingency. Looking at that funding in terms of schedule, what that would mean is we're really asking the county commissioners' approval to use our bond savings to fund the initial design. That initial design would be done in the next fiscal year, the 2021-22 fiscal year. And at that time, we could then come back to you with what I think are more realistic numbers. Again, I know that $27 million number is not going to get any higher. Our goal would be to see how low we can get that number. But I think we could, in that initial design phase, we could be here next year, talking about what it would take to then carry those through design, bid, and construction. The future funding would start in July of 2022. If funded, we would then move into design and bidding. Construction would take place over a 2-year period. River Lights and Pine Valley would open in 2025. As soon as River Lights opened, we would relocate that school from Williams, or the population from Williams, into the new building. We'd renovate Williams, and then that school would, that facility and pre-K program would open in August of 2026. So this is a 30,000-foot look at how these projects could be funded and how the school system proceed. Any questions?
I know you're grappling with where money comes from. One of John Maxwell's laws of leadership is the law of sunken cost. to where you start putting more money into something than what it's worth. And paraphrasing Commissioner Zapple, as we used to talk about roofs, you know, why are we putting money into something that's going to need to be torn down anyway, and we're really wasting resources? And we've having the same conversation with the government center redevelopment, where it's costing more to maintain that facility. Same conversation with the museum and the downtown library, to where you're just spinning your wheels and spending more money than you should be, to where you're better off having something that's newer, that will serve you long term than not. So again, when I look at a Mary C. Williams, to me, it's in worse shape than Pine Valley is. And at the same time, I know that children have a sense of place and pride when they walk into a building that's like a new College Park versus a Mary C. Williams. And I think that builds a sense of pride within those students as well. And I'm curious as to whether you've had a conversation with the community around Mary C. Williams as you're looking at transitioning those kids to the new school, because I know that there's a sense of community for those people in that area, Arrowhead, Monterey Heights, in that whole area. There's an attachment to that property. So has that conversation happened?
Can I speak to that a little bit? Commissioner Barfield, the Latino Alliance has been a very close partner with the school system over the past year, and that was actually one of the asks that they've had, is a newcomer center or a welcome center, specifically in that area, because we do have so many new residents coming to New Hanover County, and many of them are non-English speakers, and this would be an opportunity to have everything under one roof. And to standardize the process and simplify it for these families that are coming in. And so I know that that's been one of the conversations with that building, and why it was, because that we do have a very high Spanish speaking population in that immediate area. So that's one aspect of it. And I don't know if Mr. Anderson, if you want to expand on that.
And so River Lights would be adjacent to Williams and Arrowhead Park. It would be accessible from, I can't remember, Arnold Drive, but it would be accessible from the same road that you turn into the Arrowhead Park. You would just go straight and access River Lights Elementary School. So, in terms of proximity, I think it's very close to where the new school is. I think that they would be very excited about a new school, as well as the pre-K opportunity at Williams. And I hear you loud and clear. I think when, we do not want to pour money into something that it is, is not going to be new and will not last another 20, 30, 40 years. And I think, with your approval of us continuing or starting that initial design phase, we'll have a much better idea. We know what a new school would cost. We can compare the renovation needs to the cost of a new school to make sure that we're approaching this in the most efficient and effective manner possible.
Mr. Temple.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eddie, I'm going to pick up on that thread a little bit concerning the new River Lights versus Mary C. Williams. Just the numbers we saw here, I go back to your earlier slide about as much as 10% growth in our overall elementary. We know that whole cohort is really increasing. If we take one elementary school or build a new one, and then essentially take the population from Mary C. Williams and adding it there, to me, that doesn't solve the problem. I know you said we'll build a little bit larger there, but it sounds like we have a much larger problem population-wise. Now begs the question of, then we end up with two elementary schools that are, as you just pointed out, almost on top of each other. Could you address that? And the second part of the question too, that's unrelated, but I haven't heard any discussion about Virgo. And maybe I just don't know, maybe that's moved completely over into the university's hands, or whose responsibility, although I know it certainly was at one time in our system. So what's happening with that?
All right. Well, in looking at our capacity numbers, I mentioned that we are growing at a slower rate. There's definite growth. Even our projections are showing that. But I really do believe it's a more manageable growth. And I believe that in looking to the future, whether it's a bond or any kind of future building program, regardless of how it's funded, I really think that we've got an opportunity to save money and address that growth by expanding our existing facility. And that we really should maximize every space that we have before we go build a new school somewhere. Obviously, that's an efficient way of spending taxpayer dollars. But the other side is if we build a school where it's needed, we don't have to redistrict as much. And I think people would much rather have us expand their existing school rather than go build a new school and then they have to relocate. So we do in this plan, it has far more renovations and additions and less new construction than any previous plan that I've done. And with DC Virgo, I would have to go back to the original MOU, but I do believe that they are responsible, we're responsible for some maintenance, but capital needs and improvements they would be responsible for.
They being UNCW.
UNCW. Yeah, there's specific language I would have to look at. There's correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, but there's a dollar threshold.
I can't remember the amount, but, and it's a 5-year agreement renewable. So, I can't remember how that, since our third or fourth year, I've lost track, but, we can check all that and get you information.
I'd hate to see them fall out of the loop. I mean, the last time I was over there, you definitely used some improvements. If it's, a 5-year loop, you don't renew, all of a sudden we're stuck with a decrepit school. Not people, but of course the facility. That is something worth tracking.
Absolutely.
So we know that the secret is out. Wilmington is the place to be based on Southern Lifestyle Magazine. And so we anticipate those projections to come through. So I guess the question is this a plan that the commission could support?
Do you need our support in the form of a motion today in order to spend that funds any? Do you need a motion from the commissioners today to move forward with it? I mean, what do you need from us?
I think what we're really asking is not for a motion, but for maybe just consensus. If we could use those bond funds for that purpose, then we'll do a budget transfer and we'll send it to our board for approval, and then we'll go to the county commissioners where you could act on it.
No, here's first.
Is there any way we can build any of that quick? Is there any way we can build any of that quick?
We can certainly look at that. The tricky thing in schools is we keep building 90,000 square foot building in less than a year. It's usually about 16 to 18 months. The benefit of the downside is it's a 2-year span really before the school opens. The positive thing is we try to schedule this so that we get the heating and air turned on in the winter months. Building insulated, closed in. We can go through a heating and a cooling cycle, and then we have the summer to really get things moved in, new furniture, technology. So there's pros and cons, but we can certainly look at it. It's difficult with schools. Mid-year openings are problematic, and it's just difficult to take a year off the schedule.
No, Vice Chair.
I'm not sure who to address this to, so. Are there any restraints on that bond money? Or is this is this an appropriate use?
It is allowable, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so there's no question about you, this is savings that you've had on previous bonds that you can use, and now you're drawing it down, wanting to draw that money down to use, correct?
Correct. I think so. I'm looking at Mr. Cooper.
It was originally identified for other projects, and because they did such an amazing job with, there were some cuts in there were some savings, that's why we have some left over, is that?
Right, I think the bond when the bond is sold, it's for facility improvements for the school system. It's a very generic description. When we budget those projects, we're very descriptive. There were 14 projects, and that money went into each of those 14 projects, and we cannot transfer between those projects or out of those projects without both board and county commissioners' approval. So this would be creating 3 new projects, and so we would take that to our board and the county commissioners as a budget transfer for approval.
Okay. So, I'm sorry. So, and Madam Attorney, I think you had some questions. Does this need to come to us to vote on first, or the school board to vote on the request and then come to, how does
Well, I think ultimately it's up to the county commissioners. You need a vote, not just a consensus to proceed with the expenditure, and Lisa's nodding. So either way, I mean, if the request is that the school board wants that, you can ultimately make a motion and a second and vote that whatever it is the need is, that expenditure be made. And Lisa can say more of what she needs, but you just can't spend the bond money by consensus. You need a vote.
But not, so my question was, does the school board need to do something or take a vote or whatever? And then us, I mean, that can all happen. Chris, look at me. Can that happen now, or is it?
You could approve this request as long as the work they do is consistent with what's been shown here. But if somewhere along the way, the superintendent and the board decide they need to deviate, they would still have to come back to you. So you can give authorization today for design on these 3 projects, but it would have to be design on those 3 projects, not something different or a 4th and a 5th added in.
You need to make a motion, ask us to
Do
do
it.
it, and we'll discuss it.
I would recommend that you make a motion, a definitive motion as to what the school board's request is.
Okay.
And then we would do a motion to make those expenditures for it.
So do we have a motion
If I could
for-
chime in,
Mr. Barfield?
I think what I hear Eddie Anderson saying is, let me go back and refine this and bring it to my board so they can figure out what they want to do. Is that what I'm hearing you say, Eddie?
Well, I don't think I was correct in outlining the process. I think this has been presented to our board, and they're all in support. What we would be specifically asking for is permission to use $888,918 in savings from the 2014 bond to fund the initial design on River Lights, Pine Valley, and Williams, as well as the program management, continued program management, which is 2 project managers for the 21-22 fiscal year.
Now, just you make those on your side and follow along.
I'm trying to make sure that we're doing the correct thing here, because we have done the certification already.
This was,
But the bond piece of it, is that something separate that we need to act on?
yes, it is.
Okay.
This would be completely separate. It's beginning the implementation of needs identified in the program.
Okay, so,
Madam Chair, I would like to move at this time that the board get authorization for $888,918 for initial design on River Lights, Pine Valley, and Berry Sue Williams.
okay, thank you, Mr. Bollier. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Wildebohr, I heard you first. And all right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes for the Board of Ed.
Commissioner Zappa?
Thank you. The existing fund balance at the school board, do we know what that is at this point? And has there been any discussion on using some of this money, using the fund balance, which already exists for this, and reserving the bond money for construction? Mary Hazel, could you chime in on that?
Wish you wouldn't.
Sorry.
At least you're honest.
I can give you a report of our current fund balance and, sort of recommended reserves, but with everything going on with upcoming, enrollment being less than current year state funding, at least let us get through the first couple of, the budget process for next year before I can really answer that. I would have a better answer for you in June, about an appropriation fund balance, to put towards that. And you would be switching the fund, from the general fund to the capital outlay fund, which normally you can only do in an emergency situation.
Right, but that fund balance, of course, is all, money that's come from the taxpayers already that's there. So it seems like it'd be an appropriate use, and I don't know if we're talking about, 5 million, 10 million that's in there, and I recognize that we're coming through an extraordinary period. And maybe, not back to Dr. Faust, do we have any kind of a handle on or what's happening with the charter schools, the homeschooling, the pods, the virtual, how many students we're gonna see bleed off of that, wrong word, that will, not come back into that. So we see what the actual need is. You have any sense of what the ADM is? I know we're only, 3 days into it at this point? When will we get some kind of a heads up on that?
That's why she needs to keep the fund balance, because we're gonna pay some money back at some point in time, won't we?
Thank you, gentlemen. At this time, I'm gonna make a motion, copying whatever the Nelson's motion was.
$888,982.
Yeah, whatever Nelson said.
From the 2014 bond.
Yeah, from the 2014 bond statements, and then ask staff to please continue to answer Commissioner Zappa's questions with regards to fund balance. Keep that discussion coming, but if we can go and move forward with that today.
I will second that.
Thank you. We're going to do a roll call vote.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, but just as a point of clarification, and I know this is specific to the bonds, but you also spoke, Eddie, to the Bellamy roof replacement. The Board of Commissioners would have to, at some point, consent to that as well, that if they want in the future to do the $500,000 worth of roof replacement, because of how we've set up the orders, you would have to consent. So
Add that to my motion, the
Okay,
lady
thank
budget
you.
amendment, that could go with the future roof. Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right.
Was that, I'm sorry, was
It
that
was-
part of Mr.?
it was
Gillespie?
not.
Okay.
but part of their motion, but you're giving it to them at the point in time that they come forward to do that work. And if they don't do that work, they can't spend that money. So
Okay.
it creates another savings.
Thank you. I'm happy to amend that second.
Thank you very much. Do a roll call vote. Commissioner Barfield.
I am greatly conflicted right now because I really want to finish Commissioner Zappel's conversation to fully follow the money. And just to bring some clarity, at the same time, I think it'd be good to have this conversation in one of our full meetings that's televised like this coming Monday. And I understand the push and the rush. I would vote no today. I would vote yes on Monday.
Well, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. That's a no. Commissioner Zappel.
I'm caught in the same bind that Commissioner Barfield does. I'm absolutely supportive of what we're doing. I wish there was some way that we could approve the thought of using that money. I have no problem using the bond money. Just want to make sure that we spend it in the appropriate time frame, I guess, or somehow we're going to need all the dollars we can get to accomplish everything we have. Just want to make sure that it's really clear what pot of money that we're pulling from to get the work done. So I would say in principle, I'm certainly supportive of the motion that's been brought forward from the recommendation. But I would like to continue the thought of Mary Hazel and see what that information is coming forward along with the ADM results as well. That may change the overall need of what we're talking about.
Yes or no, Commissioner Zappel? Yes or no?
I think I said yes,
No?
I was supportive
Say
of
yes?
that.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Ravenborough?
Yes.
Commissioner, Madam Vice Chair?
Yes.
And I vote affirmative. That's a 4-1 approval, Madam Clerk. Is there anything else?
That is it. We thank you very much for your support.
I do want to thank all these school board members for coming and showing up today. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me personally, you coming here and listening to us ask these questions. I know that I'm committed to, and I've talked to Commissioner Gravenberg. I want to share a link from the other commissioners that I want to see teacher pay at number 1 this year. That's a commitment that I would like to see, Dr. Faust. That is something that I want. We'll have to try to see if we can get everyone else there, but I'm committed to not going for a budget unless it has it in there. So with that, commissioners, anything further? School board members?
If I can share one thing, first off, I'd like to thank the commissioners very much for today. It was a great meeting, and I thank you very much for welcoming us. I also would like to just have a quick shout out to our school social workers. It's School Social Worker Week, so thank our school social workers, and just like to do a shout out for them. So again, thank you all very much. Thank you, Commissioner Barfield, for your time today.
Thank you. I'm married to a social worker. I appreciate that.
You might be in trouble that you didn't.
I try to stay there. Yeah.
First of all, thank everybody for being here. I think this was a great first step, and I look forward to many more. But I want to give a shout out to Dr. Faust and his team that work so closely with our HHS team. And Chris, you know how I feel about them. I just can't tell you what that meant to our community at large, but particularly all the teachers and faculty and staff and support personnel. Those 2 Wednesdays that you all pulled together, the 2 teams, that was phenomenal. And it truly was Herculean. And I know that all the commissioners that were here, we went out to visit the particular sites, took them some goodies, did, just small little things, just to say thank you. And that was Herculean. So thank you for letting us have your staff. And Chris, certainly thank you for giving us the dynamic staff that we've got that continues to do unbelievable work every single day and getting that vaccine out. So thank you.
I'd like to say the same thing. The partnership that we've had with the county has just been incredibly important, and we appreciate all that you've done for our system. And we look forward to many more collaboration. I hope that we can make this meeting a quarterly event to keep caught up with the items that we're all focused on, because at the end of the day, this is about New Hanover County, and we represent our constituents, and they need to hear what's going on, and I think they need to see us working together for the betterment of this community as a whole. So we really, really appreciate you having us here today, and thank you, Dr. Faust and Eddie Anderson, for presenting to us today.
Madam Chair, if I could chime in.
Commissioner
Just
Marco.
wanna thank the school board leadership. I think that sometimes you all will deal with issues that are more controversial than ours because you're dealing with people's children. And children can become a very emotional topic as you talk about, should they be in school or not be in school? Should they be sent to different schools in terms of redistricting? And so I commend you all for your efforts. Thank you for your commitment. I know that each one of you all truly have a passion for our students here and our youth here, and that comes across greatly throughout our community. But I know that you all are struggling and grappling with these tough decisions, and communication and relationship is so important. So keep calling, keep having the conversations with us, and likewise, I get a chance to talk to Nelson a good bit, still waiting to play golf with him. I'm not sure if Dr. Faust is ever going to connect with me and play some golf. Stephanie, your chair, she and I have talked a good bit. Stephanie Crable, we've been around the block for a long time with her community activism, trying to getting on the school board. And so, there's relationship there, and to me, it's important we continue to build upon that. And Mary Hazel, tell your husband that I have a desk for him if he ever decides to leave his current company.
On your right.
Commissioner Dunkel.
I think I'd like to add my voice to thanking all the school board members for coming out and having this. I hope will be a quarterly or certainly a periodic conversation. This has been so positive. I learned so much. Thank you, Dr. Faust. Eddie Anderson, every time you open your mouth, I learn something new. So I thank you. It gives us a deeper understanding of everything that needs to happen with your budget and the budget that we have. We represent a huge part of it. And so it's so important that we continue these conversations and we understand what your needs are and what your concerns are. So thank you for making the time to come out here today, and look forward to seeing you again all soon.
Commissioner Rappaport, the only one that hasn't spoken. You wanna talk?
I always run my mouth too much.
Anyone else on it?
I just wanted to, and Dr. Faust, tell me if I'm wrong, but, and I know you will, the extended invitation, to work with Dr. Faust or any of us to visit our schools or, our senior staff. If you have that question, the scheduled time with the principals, and they would more than happily show you around their schools, because there's so much good work going on in all of our schools that oftentimes we don't get the good press for. The good stuff doesn't always float to the surface, but it is most definitely there, and we're very proud of that, and we work really hard to keep that there. So you work with Dr. Faust and his team or us, and we're happy to go with you to look at any of our schools.
Madam Chair, just briefly, I would like to extend the invitation to anybody on our governmental team for any round of golf at any time. No, God, no. But I would certainly echo Ms. Crandall, say if any commissioner or any member of your leadership team would like to go visit school, I would love to meet with you, walk you through, and they'd be happy to see you. Thank you very much for your commitment to our school system.
Our son's starting middle school next year, so you may regret ever saying that.
All right. Okay, we need a motion from adjourn. All right. Adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.